You know, they say relationships are built on trust. But what happens when that trust is tested in the most unexpected way? What if the person you trust the most, the one you thought had your back no matter what, makes a decision that leaves you questioning everything? A decision that could destroy the bond you've spent years building. And it all happens because of something as unexpected as a luxury car. Hi, I'm Sarah, and today I'm going to share a story with you that, honestly, I never thought I'd be telling. It's a story about love, betrayal, and how something as simple as lending a car can unravel a relationship. Trust me, you won't see the twist coming. Imagine this, you've been in a relationship for months. Everything seems perfect. Your boyfriend is caring, attentive, and you're head over heels in love. But then, one day, he does something completely out of character. He lends his luxury car to your best friend. Sounds harmless, right? It's just a car after all. But it's not. The car was his pride and joy. He rarely lets anyone touch it, let alone drive it. But he trusts your friend so much that he lets her take it for a spin. And that's when things go wrong. I found out that there was more to that car than just the keys in her hand. There was something deeper, something I never expected. What I didn't know at the time was that my boyfriend wasn't just lending his car to my best friend. He was actually lending it to his secret crush. And that's where everything started to fall apart. The moment he handed her those keys, I was already losing him. I just didn't realize it yet. I didn't know it at the time, but that one act would change everything. Little did I know, my trust would be shattered, and my relationship would never be the same again. Now, let me take you back to that moment. The moment I realized that something was off. It wasn't an obvious sign at first, just a weird, uncomfortable feeling that settled deep in my gut. My boyfriend Jason had always been so careful with his things. His car, especially, was like his baby. It was the kind of car that turned heads wherever it went, and he'd always made it clear that only a handful of people were allowed to drive it. So when he told me he was lending it to Emily, my best friend, I didn't think too much about it. Emily and I had been close for years, so I just thought he trusted her. But the more I thought about it, the more questions kept popping up. Why would he lend her the car? Emily and I had been friends for so long, but we had never really talked about cars, let alone her interest in his. In fact, we never even had a conversation about it before. So why her? And why was he acting so casual about it? I mean, I was the one in the relationship with him, not her. Why did he trust her more than me when it came to something so important to him? I decided not to make a big deal of it at the time. I didn't want to seem like I was overreacting. But as the days passed, things started to feel off. Jason was more distant than usual, and Emily seemed unusually excited about driving the car. I couldn't put my finger on it, but there was something that didn't sit right. She'd never been into cars like that before. Then came the day when I overheard something that made my stomach drop. It was a normal afternoon, and I was sitting in the living room, scrolling through my phone. The sound of Jason's voice drifted through the open door from the kitchen. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but something caught my attention. I heard Jason laughing, and then Emily's voice responded. They were talking about the car. But it wasn't just any conversation. It was the way they were talking that made me pause. It was as though they were sharing a joke, something private, something intimate. Emily was teasing him about how much he loved his car, and Jason was laughing it off, but the tone of his voice, there was something there. "Come on, Jason," Emily said, her voice light and playful. "You know you trust me with this car more than you trust her." I froze. It wasn't the words themselves that hit me. It was the way she said them. It was too casual, too familiar. It didn't sound like a normal joke between friends. It sounded like someone trying to test the waters, trying to gauge a reaction. And Jason? Well, he laughed. The kind of laugh that made me feel like he was just trying to brush off the awkwardness. But in that moment, I felt a wave of jealousy and confusion. Emily was my best friend. Why would she say something like that? And why was Jason letting it slide so easily? It was as if he hadn't even noticed the underlying tension in her words. It was clear that they were closer than I had realized. But how could I confront either of them without looking paranoid? Without seeming crazy? I didn't know what to do next, But I knew one thing. Something was happening between them that I wasn't seeing, and I needed to figure it out before it was too late. The next few days were a blur. I tried to push the thoughts of Jason and Emily to the back of my mind, but it was impossible. Every time I saw them together, there was this unspoken energy between them. It wasn't just the way they joked around, but the way they looked at each other. I could feel it, and it made my stomach churn. I tried to act normal around them, but something felt off. It wasn't like before. It was subtle, but it was there. Emily would smile at Jason in a way that felt too knowing, and he'd respond with this soft, almost affectionate tone. They were so comfortable around each other, so familiar, like they had some secret bond that I wasn't a part of. One evening, after a long day, Jason and I sat on the couch, watching a movie. He was leaning back, his arm draped casually across the backrest. I was trying to enjoy the movie, but my mind kept drifting to what I had overheard. "Babe, are you okay?" Jason asked, breaking my train of thought. His voice was soft, and for a moment I could see that caring side of him again, the side that I had fallen for. "Yeah, I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile. But my heart wasn't in it. I was thinking about that conversation, those little moments I had witnessed. Jason had no idea what was going on inside my head. He was so oblivious to the storm that was brewing between us. As the movie played on, I tried to push all the jealousy and doubt aside. I wanted to trust him. I needed to trust him. But I couldn't ignore the way things had changed. I felt myself slipping, unsure of what was really going on between Jason and Emily. But then, as if fate decided to push me even further, I received a message on my phone. It was from Emily. The message was short, but it was enough to send a chill down my spine. "Hey, I need to talk. It's about Jason." My heart skipped a beat. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was happening, and I was about to find out exactly what. I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen, unsure of what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend like everything was fine, but deep down, I knew I couldn't. The curiosity, the worry, the need for answers, it was too overwhelming. After a few seconds that felt like an eternity, I typed back, my fingers shaking slightly. "What's going on?" The reply came almost immediately. "It's about Jason. I don't know how to say this, but I think you should know." My heart pounded in my chest. What was she about to tell me? Was she about to confess something? Was this about the way Jason had been acting lately? The suspense was unbearable. I walked away from the couch and into the kitchen, trying to calm myself down. My thoughts were racing. The silence in the house was deafening, and every second felt like a countdown. I didn't want to overreact, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Finally, Emily sent another message. "I think Jason has feelings for me." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt the room start to spin. I could barely process what I was reading. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, but my hands were trembling. How could this be happening? How could Jason, my boyfriend, feel this way about Emily, of all people? I quickly typed back, my mind racing. "Are you serious?" It felt like the world had paused. Everything around me faded as I waited for her response. I had to know if this was real. If Jason had really been hiding something from me all along. Emily replied, her message short but clear. I didn't want to say anything, but I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. "He's been acting different, like he's trying to impress me. I think he's into me." Her words hit harder than anything I had ever heard. I couldn't believe it. Jason, the guy I trusted more than anyone, the guy I thought I knew so well, had been hiding his feelings from me all along. But I couldn't just sit there and let this happen. I had to confront him. I had to know the truth. I couldn't stop the flood of emotions rushing through me. Confusion, anger, hurt, all of it swirling inside me, making my head spin. Jason had never given me any reason to doubt him, but now everything was in question. I stared at my phone, contemplating whether I should call him or wait for him to come home. The thought of confronting him was terrifying. What if he denied it? What if I was overreacting? But no, there was no denying what Emily had said. It was clear now that something was wrong. As if on cue, my phone buzzed again. A notification popped up. Jason had texted me. My heart skipped a beat as I opened his message. "Hey babe, I need to talk to you when I get home. Something happened today that I think you should know." My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe for a moment. What could he possibly want to tell me? Was he about to confess something? I felt a cold chill run down my spine. Was this the moment he would admit everything? I quickly typed back, my mind racing. What happened? His reply came back almost immediately. I can't explain it over text. Just please don't be mad when I get home. A knot formed in my stomach. Please don't be mad. That was the last thing I needed to hear. Why did he say that? Was he trying to prepare me for something even worse? I felt trapped in this whirlwind of uncertainty. The whole situation felt like a nightmare, and I didn't know how much longer I could take it. I had to know the truth. But what if the truth was more than I could handle? Minutes turned into hours, and finally, the door opened. Jason walked in, his face a mask of concern. As soon as he saw me, he knew something was off. He hesitated for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Can we talk?" I nodded, barely able to speak. My throat was dry, my pulse pounding in my ears. This was it, the moment of truth. He took a deep breath before sitting down beside me. "I need to apologize. I made a huge mistake today." I looked at him, waiting for the explanation I had been dreading. My hands were shaking as I gripped the sides of the couch, bracing myself for what he was about to say. I lent my car to Emily," Jason continued. "I know that sounds bad, but it wasn't what it seems. I didn't mean for things to get so complicated." I could feel the blood draining from my face. He had lent his car to Emily? Why would he do that, and why didn't he tell me? But I couldn't let him off the hook that easily. "What do you mean? Why didn't you tell me?" Jason's eyes dropped to the floor. He looked guilty, ashamed. "It wasn't about you or anything like that. Emily, she was just so upset, and I wanted to help her. I didn't realize how it would look to you." My mind was reeling, trying to piece together what he was saying. The more he spoke, the more the pieces of the puzzle started to come together. But I wasn't ready to let him off the hook yet. "So, you didn't think it was weird to lend her your car?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jason sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I thought it would help her, and it would make things easier. But I see now that I messed up. I should have talked to you first. I should have been honest with you." His words didn't make me feel any better. The more he explained, the more I felt like I had been kept in the dark. I could feel the tension in the room growing with every word Jason spoke. His apology didn't seem to make things better. It only made me question everything even more. How could he be so oblivious to how his actions would make me feel? How could he think lending his car to Emily, his friend, was a good idea without even mentioning it to me? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. The last thing I wanted was to lash out, but at the same time, I felt so betrayed. It was hard to even look at him. I had trusted him, believed in us, and now everything felt like it was falling apart. "Jason," I said, my voice trembling, "you don't get it. It's not just about the car. It's about the fact that you didn't think about how it would look to me. You didn't even consider how it might make me feel. You just did it, without even talking to me first." Jason shifted uncomfortably, his hands clasped together in his lap. I know, I messed up. But you have to believe me. I didn't mean for it to turn into something like this. It wasn't about you or her. It was just me trying to help." I shook my head, trying to keep the tears from welling up. "You think I'm going to just forget this, Jason? You think you can just fix it with a simple apology?" Jason reached for my hand, but I pulled away, feeling the distance between us growing wider by the second. "I don't know what to believe anymore," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "You're telling me it wasn't about her, but how am I supposed to believe that when you did something like that? And you didn't even think it would hurt me?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with guilt. "I never meant to hurt you. That's the last thing I wanted. But I see now that I made a mistake. I should have been upfront about it from the start. I should have never put you in this position." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt heavier than ever. I needed to think, to process everything Jason had just said. But my heart was telling me that something wasn't right. I couldn't just ignore the way things had been. He'd made a choice to lend his car to Emily, and that choice, whether he realized it or not, had shaken the foundation of our relationship. Finally, I broke the silence. I don't know if I can just move past this, Jason. Trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. Jason's face softened, and he sighed deeply, as if he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. I understand, and I'm not asking you to forget. I'm asking you to give me a chance to make things right. I know I messed up, but I want to prove to you that I can do better. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it wasn't going to be easy to erase. I need time, Jason. I need to figure out if I can trust you again. Jason nodded, his face filled with regret. Take all the time you need. I'll be here trying to fix what I broke. The room was silent once more, but this time it was different. This silence wasn't just uncomfortable. It was the silence of uncertainty, of a relationship hanging in the balance. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. Things had changed, and I wasn't sure if I could go back to how they were before. The next few days felt like a blur. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me, and I found myself unable to shake the feeling of betrayal. Jason had apologized, and for a moment it felt like we could get past this. But the cracks in our relationship were too big to ignore. Every time I saw him, I couldn't help but replay the moments when Emily took that car, when she smiled like she had won something. My mind raced with questions. Was I overreacting? Was I just being insecure? I had to remind myself that this wasn't just about the car. It wasn't even about Emily. It was about trust. It was about feeling valued and respected. Jason hadn't just lent a luxury car to a friend. He had made a choice that made me question how he viewed our relationship. And that stung. I spent most of the following days alone, reflecting on everything that had happened. I couldn't talk to my friends about it. They might tell me I was overthinking it, that it was just a car, just a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about the car. It was about the fact that Jason didn't see me as his priority. It was about his lack of consideration for how his actions would affect me. And that realization hurt more than anything else. One evening, after work, I decided to take a walk to clear my mind. The weather was cool, and the breeze felt refreshing against my skin. As I walked through the park, I tried to quiet the storm in my mind. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I needed to make sense of everything. I couldn't let this break me, but I also couldn't keep pretending like it didn't matter. After a while, I found myself sitting on a bench near a small pond. The sound of the water gently lapping against the shore brought me some comfort. It was a place where I could think, where I could let my emotions come and go without the constant pressure to act or respond. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I glanced down. It was a message from Jason. "Can we talk?" I hesitated before replying. Was I ready to hear more? Did I even want to talk to him anymore? My heart said one thing, my mind another. But I knew that if I wanted closure, if I wanted peace, I had to face this. I typed back, "Where? Your place?" I sat there for a few moments, debating. Finally, I responded with, "Okay." When I got home, Jason was already waiting outside. His face looked different now, tired, anxious, maybe even a little defeated. He greeted me with a hesitant smile, and I couldn't help but notice how much he looked like he was carrying a heavy burden. "I've been thinking a lot," he said as we walked inside. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, and I don't know how to make it right." We sat down in the living room, the familiar space now feeling cold and unfamiliar. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat in the silence between us. "I don't know if you can," I replied quietly. "You've already broken my trust, Jason, and that's not something I can just forget about." "I know," he said, nodding. "I know I can't just ask you to forgive me right away. I can't undo what I did, but I can promise you this. I will do whatever it takes to show you that I care, that I respect you, and that I will never make that mistake again. You mean too much to me to lose." His words, though sincere, didn't completely erase the doubt I felt. But as I looked at him, I saw the pain in his eyes. He wasn't just apologizing because he wanted things to go back to normal. He was apologizing because he realized that his actions had consequences, and he was willing to take responsibility for them. "I need time," I said. "Time to think. Time to decide if I can trust you again. But I also need you to understand that it's not just about me forgiving you. It's about showing me that you can be the partner I need." I understand, Jason said softly, and I'm not going to pressure you. I'm just asking for a chance to prove myself. Over the next few weeks, things between us were strained. Jason tried his best to make up for his mistake. He planned thoughtful dates, he took care to listen when I needed to talk, and he was patient with me as I worked through my feelings. It wasn't easy. There were times when I wanted to shut down, when I wanted to walk away, but I had to remind myself that healing takes time. Trust takes time. And maybe, just maybe, this relationship was worth saving. One afternoon, as we sat together in a quiet cafe, Jason reached across the table, taking my hand in his. His touch was warm, comforting, like a reminder that he was there, trying his hardest. He looked at me with such sincerity in his eyes that, for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to believe that things could change. I know it's been hard, he said quietly, and I'm sorry. I will never take you for granted again. I will always put you first. You deserve that, and I promise I will make sure you feel it every day. I could feel my heart soften. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is, but it was real. Jason had messed up, yes, but he was trying. He was showing me that he cared in ways that were more meaningful than just words. And in that moment, I realized that maybe I could start to forgive him. Not just for what he did, but for the person he was trying to become. I believe you, I said softly, but it's going to take time. I need to know that this isn't just a temporary fix, that this is something you're willing to work for every day. I am, Jason promised, squeezing my hand gently. Every single day. And so we began the long journey of rebuilding. It wasn't always easy. There were bumps along the way, moments when doubt crept in, and times when I questioned if we were truly stronger than before. But little by little, we learned how to communicate better, how to listen to each other's needs, and how to respect the boundaries we had set. As the weeks turned into months, our relationship evolved. We found a new rhythm, one built on honesty, trust, and mutual respect. Jason showed me that he wasn't just sorry, he was committed to being the partner I deserved. And I, in turn, learned to trust him again, to let go of the fear and doubt that had consumed me. In the end, it wasn't about the luxury car. It wasn't about Emily or the mistakes we made along the way. It was about how we learned to navigate the challenges together, how we grew as individuals and as a couple. Our love wasn't perfect, but it was real. And sometimes that's enough.